There we go. Okay, I believe we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. This is the first NGRAIN webinar in our 2016 series. The title is Creating 3D Virtual Maintenance Trainers with Producer Pro. I am Alexei Najram-Plotnitsky, and I am a product manager at NGRAIN. And with me today is Keith Pollock, Senior Director, Product Sales. Keith, say hello to the people.
Hello out there, and I think some of you on the list, if I saw the names correctly, some of you already know me, so welcome.
All right. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I want to thank you for your interest. A little housekeeping up front. So I don't know if you saw, but I'll tell you now that we are recording this session, and we will be making that recording available later. And you have the ability to ask questions. There should be a chat feature related to any meeting here. We've actually configured that feature so that the messages are only coming to the presenters. And so if you'd like to ask a question, please submit it there. The plan is to get to questions at the end. If we see a good question that we'll select to answer for the whole audience, then we will. But be aware that we may choose to follow up personally after the fact. In terms of what today is about, I'm going to be giving you an overview of the training content that you can create with Producer Pro, and I'll be giving you a little bit of a taste of what it looks like while you're creating it. So essentially an introduction. We're going to begin with an introduction and an overview to make sure everyone's on the same page, sort of prerequisites for this course. And yes, I can see that, Keith, and probably so can everyone, which is interesting. Well, in any case, we'll see how that proceeds. I would encourage people to ask their questions at the end. So we will be going through training that you can create through the context of observe, practice, and test. And then we'll be doing some questions and answers at the end. First, a very quick introduction about NGRAIN. NGRAIN is an industrial 3D company that's been around since the early 2000s. You may have heard of us for our voxels. You may have heard of us for our augmented reality. But today we're talking about maintenance training and our COTS product for that. You can learn more about us at ngrain.com. This is the website here. I encourage you to go there. But moving on, today is very much about Producer Pro. That's the product in question. Producer Pro is the fastest, easiest way to make 3D virtual maintenance training and virtual task trainers, VTTs. You can train maintainers in removal and replacement for the installation, repair, and maintenance of equipment. You don't need a background in 3D graphics. You don't need any scripting, and you don't need any programming. You can easily create animations, and we'll see a little bit of that today. You can create SCORM-compliant procedures and tasks to integrate with your learning management system. You can develop in one place and deploy to many. We do not have any deployment licensing, as we do not charge for students. And you can bring your existing 3D content from any major format. And that's important enough that we'll touch on that in more detail. So for everything you do, you need some 3D content. And you can use your existing 3D models from every major format, including 3ds Max, Maya, Autodesk Inventor, CATIA, Creo, SolidWorks, and more. That's by no means the only options. And then from there, you need to go through a conversion process. For people familiar with NGRAIN, you will recognize Polytrans and Transmagic or Transmagic, which we've had for some time, but we also have a new conversion option that if you're interested in, it's available, and I'd love to hear your interest. Autodesk Fusion 360 is a cloud-based Autodesk tool, and we have conversion for that as well. And then ultimately you end up in the NGRAIN format, which is what you use in Producer Pro. Moving on, today we'll be looking at development and deployment. Development happens in Producer Pro on the Windows desktop, but from there you can deploy to many places. Here on the slide I have a few. So we have standalone Windows desktop viewer application. You can embed your training into a browser, and a special form of that would be a virtual task trainer, which we will see today. You can embed your training into a Microsoft Word document or a Microsoft PowerPoint document. We have an Android viewer, which if you're interested in, please contact me, and more. These are not the only ways to use this training, but they are the prime ones. And in fact, the two we'll major on today are the desktop viewer and the virtual task trainer. And from there, let's move on to take a look at the training we're going to be focusing on today. So I will bring up Producer Pro. So here we have on the screen now the 3126 engine. So this is the 3D model that will be at the heart of today's webinar. It is a diesel engine made by Caterpillar. It has its origin in 3ds Max. The 3ds Max file, along with all of its textures, was originally 1.96 gigabytes. But here that you see right now is actually 19 megabytes of data. And so that's all of the geometry, and that also includes the training that we're going to see today. And so I think you can appreciate there's some significant compression that happens there, which makes for some improved deployability. In any case, the other thing I'd like to tell you about the model we're looking at today is that it has 913 parts. Let's have a look at it here. I'm not actually sure what frame rate everyone's going to get over the webinar, and that may depend on my connection, and it probably also depends on yours. But in any case, let's say that it's fully interactive and buttery smooth on my computer, and could be on yours. And so I'll just space the parts out here a little bit using this feature, and then we'll do some rotating. Keith, how's that looking on your end?
That looks fine, Lexi. It's a little jittery, so just be everybody just be aware of that. That's a web-based streaming issue.
Yeah. Okay, and so here we have the 913 parts. See them all in their glory. You can see that in some cases we've actually got nuts and washers modeled, and in other cases some of the parts are fused together, where the fact that they're separate is not important for the training. So we should be able to create some pretty comprehensive training with that number of parts. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to Internet Explorer, where I have open a virtual task trainer. So we're going to see NGRAIN training embedded in the browser, in this case here in IE, and the special case, which is a virtual task trainer. What is a virtual task trainer? Well, it's all of the things you see here around the outside. We could go into great detail, but that would be a webinar on its own, so we won't. But suffice to say that it's all about the CAT 3126 diesel engine here. And on the menu on the left, today we're going to be learning all about oil pump removal. I hope you're excited. I know I am. So let's click that there to bring that up. Here we have a little overview. Across the top, you may recognize this from the agenda: observe, practice, test. Great. So I'm going to pick observe. For a moment here, the training content's going to load. I'll take this opportunity to point out that I'm running this webinar from a pretty standard Lenovo ThinkPad. If you're really picky, it's a T440S. It's a little badly behaved, but it's doing well today. So you can see that loaded pretty fast. I'll hit start, and we should all see that same looking engine again. Here in Observe, we actually have two animations. The one I'd like us to watch right now is the Watch Removal Overview. It's a 43-second animation, which could give a student a kind of a quick, whizzy look at what the procedure is going to look at like before we teach it in detail. So I'm going to hit play here. We take a look at the bottom. Some nuts come out, pan comes off, the gasket comes out. We remove the pump itself. Come in for a closer look. Remove a few more parts and gaskets. And then the job's done. And actually, I'm going to play that again because I want to point out something interesting. So here we are. I'm going to pause it about here. So, I mean, what we're looking at here is not just a video. And if I were trying to make for a show and tell, I might have had a video, but actually this is fully interactive here. So I can actually spin the world around. I can actually pull parts off the model. And then, you know, if I were the student and I wanted to investigate further, I could do so interactively, and then I could continue the animation. So just showing off that this is really truly a 3D model here that's being moved around. Right, so that's the animation in the virtual task trainer. What does that look like in Producer? So here we're back in Producer. We have the animations here. This is the watch oil pump removal animation. So I'm going to click that to open it. It loads. It takes a second or two, but not very many of them. Okay, so here's the animation across the bottom. This is the animation timeline. Seems pretty reasonable. And what each of these boxes across the bottom is they are keyframes. So this is the basis upon which NGRAIN animations are made. And I think you'll see how easy they are. So if I double click the first one, we load up and say, okay, that's what the animation looks at the start. We're looking at the engine. We have this little call out that says oil pump removal. If I move on to the at 2 seconds, the sign is gone. At 4 seconds, we are looking at the bottom of the engine. At 5 seconds, the bolts come out. At 6 seconds, they disappear. At 7 seconds, the sleeves come out. At 8 seconds, they disappear. At 10 seconds, the oil pan slides out. So if we jump back to the beginning and we hit play, we can see that 2 seconds have passed. Now 2 seconds have passed. Bolts come out and disappear. Sleeves come out and disappear. And the oil pan comes out. So you can see that if you define the keyframes, then the software does the rest. And this is actually one of the ways we make it very easy to create animations and why you don't need a background in 3D graphics to use our software. I'd like to show what it might look like to make a change to this animation. So what I had in mind was here in this section where the bits are sliding off, let's say I wanted to change the view angle. For some reason, I didn't think this was the right way to show it to the students, and I wanted to change it. So how about, from below, a bit like this? That seems reasonable. We're not actually teaching any students. This is a webinar. So, so let's say I like this view and I want to use it. If I right-click on the keyframe and I go Capture View, now we can see that little thumbnail has changed, and that is actually the view for this keyframe. I can actually right-click on the next one, capture the view as well. I could actually hold Control and select several keyframes. There's probably one or two to the right that I want to select. There we go, 1, 2, and all of them at once I can capture view. Now, if we go to the start, we hit play, we can actually see after a couple seconds, we're now looking at it from below where the bolts slide out, the sleeves slide out, and the pan slides out. Maybe not a useful angle, but that's okay. Now, what would it look like to deploy this change? So I'm going to hit save. Takes a moment to save. Not too many.
Alexi, while it is doing that, one of the things I wanted to highlight here is that a lot of time people have questions regarding how do I add audio. And if you click on one of those keyframes, there's actually an audio field in the lower right-hand corner where you basically just attach your audio files in and they match up with the keyframe that you have them associated with.
Cool. Thank you. And I'll point out that that wasn't just a cover for saving time. It actually saved quite quickly. So now instead of going back to the browser, to view this in the VTT, I'm going to show off that we have this standalone desktop application. So I'm going to open up Viewer to look at our changes. So now I can open the file. I have to pick the Remove Observe configuration. I could talk extensively about configurations, but I won't today. We see the 913 parts loading. It takes just a second. And here we are with the watch removal overview. I can hit play, and sure enough, after a couple seconds, we're looking at it from below and seeing it happen. So that's the full cycle to making a change and having a file. That 3KO file that's created that we opened just now is about 19 megabytes. And if you wanted to update it and get it out to your students, you could probably email it to them. I wouldn't recommend that, but the point is that it's that deployable. So that was Observe. What I'd actually like to show is a slightly more sophisticated animation. So that was the kind of quick overview. But here in the Virtual Task Trainer in Internet Explorer, we also have a more complete procedure. So we'll open that up and hit play. And we'll see some slightly more advanced features in use. So here we have some cross-sectioning where we haven't removed a part, but we're actually cutting it out. There's a little blue arrow there we had a moment ago. There's some audio. I don't know if you can hear it.
The audio from the engine into a suitable container and dispose the liquid according to local regulation.
I don't keep, did the audio come through there?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there's the proof that there's audio. Another feature here, we have a kind of an alert that's telling you need to do something, and it's even, you have to click to continue. We have a little bit of context view where everything goes transparent. We only see the bolts. Some more audio. And in a moment here, there's a little more cross-sectioning. Anyways, I just wanted to show off some of those slightly more advanced features. They're pretty much as easy to use, but we just don't have the time today. But they're all created in the same way. Okay, so now that we've kind of observed at least the beginning of the task, I think we're ready to practice it. I know I certainly am. So let's go to practice. So here again, we're loading the data. It's the same file that's being loaded, but it's slightly different contents from that file. But again, it doesn't take long, so we're not too bothered. Okay, so now we're going to practice the task. So I hope you've been practicing. I know I have been. So it says here at the bottom, remove oil pan bolts. Okay, so there they are. I'm going to pull them off and put them in the parts bin. Okay, the parts bin, what's that? So I'd just like to point out that Producer Pro was created in consultation with instructional systems designers and maintenance subject matter experts. And it turns out that in real life, in many circumstances, when parts come off the equipment, they actually go in the parts bin, a literal bin of parts. And so it's here in the software to maintain that metaphor between the training and the real world, which we know should help training and retention. We can see the next step here is to pull off the washers. So I'm just going to zoom in here and grab the washers and then put them in the parts bin. Now the sleeves slide out. That was a nice little animation there. I pull them off and put them in the parts bin. Then the oil pan comes off. The oil pan gasket comes off. Now we need to remove the bolts and washers here. So this is the pump. I'm going to grab this one and pull it out. I don't know how the frame rate's going over the web, but I just like to point out just how nice that is. This bolt is rotating as I pull it in and out of its slot. I can pull it out, put it there, very realistic. The washer out there, I mean, all the bolts rotate. It's not just that one, so there's one as well. Oops, I dropped it. There we go. Washer as well. We'll pull the oil pump down. Now the system's moving me on to the next part of the task. I've been doing really well so far, so I'm actually going to deliberately make a mistake. So I'm supposed to be removing a bolt here, but I'm going to try and rip the piece straight off with my hands and put it in the parts bin. I'd just like to point out that the system will catch that and tell me that I need to try again. Okay, fine. So now I'll do it right. So I pull a bolt out, pull the washer off, O-ring, oops, dropped it. There we go. Now I can remove the thing I was going to do. It's a gasket here. Sorry, folks, we're almost done. Bolt, bolt. Whoops, I made a mistake. Please try again. Okay. Let's make sure we got these clicks right here. Oops. Sorry about that. Pickup now can come off and go in the parts bin. So now an O-ring, gasket. We're done. Congratulations, everybody. New practice, task complete. So now we're going to move on to our results. Okay, results, oil pump removal. Correct steps, 14 out of 14 score, 100%. Time completed, 2 minutes, 59 seconds. Congratulations, everyone, well done. We can see a little bit of detail here. So we can see actually what our performance was like. So for example, on step 8, we can see that mistake I deliberately made and that I got it on the second attempt. And you can see on step 12 that I actually made a slip and I got it on the second attempt. And then this is when I stop and I point out that that actually what we're looking at today can be integrated with a learning management system, that this content is SCORM compliant. And what that means is, like any normal training content, quote unquote normal, that may have no 3D component or possibly no interactive component, this too can record your results in the learning management system so that we can track our students and see how well they're performing. So let's just see a little bit about what this looks like in Producer. So I'm going to switch back to Producer. We're going to switch configurations. As before, we could talk a lot about configurations, but we won't. Let's see here, remove practice. Second to load. Let's go into the task and open it up. So there we go, oil pump removal task. Has 14 steps. I can click it. At the bottom, we have the task storyboard. It's a bit like an animation timeline, a bit not. We won't go into the detail, but in any case, here are the steps. You can see from the little thumbnails, we kind of start with the full engine, and then eventually we have everything removed in parts. No surprise. We can just take a look at this first step here. It says remove oil pan bolts. That sounds about right, the first thing we do. If we go into the details of it, I just like to show you this failure actions thing here. So I'm just going to bring it up. So if the student makes a mistake and they do not do the right step, then what happens? Well, here we have one failure attempt where we display a message, incorrect, please try again. On the second failure attempt, there's a call out that's shown. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. In the third, there's an animation. And in the fourth, we tell them it was wrong, but we move them on because we don't want them struggling with this step to hold up them learning the rest of the procedure. And so these are 4 levels of feedback right here, but it doesn't have to be 4. There could have been fewer, there could be more. That's just how many we actually have set right now. I'd like you to experience what that looks like a little bit. So we're going to go back to the VTT and we're going to restart the practice. Don't worry, I'm not going to run through the whole thing this time. So here we are again. We're playing the oil pump removal. So, okay. So let's say I'm being stubborn and I'm not going to remove the bolts. I'm just going to try and rip the pan off with my hands. We'll try and do that and we'll get told that's wrong. Okay, fine. Let's try that again. So here's that little call out. We're being told, no, incorrect. This is the part you need to do. Okay. Well, I'm still not learning. Now we get this nice animation. No, look, bolts coming out, do that. No, I'm truly stubborn here. Incorrect, and they're going to move you to the next step. So that's what that looks like. But there aren't just failure actions, there are also success actions. So now we're going to make a small change to the task and deploy it, and we'll see what that's like. So under success actions, this is the student does the right thing. Let's just display a message. And let's say, thank you, Alexi, for getting it right finally. That seems like fun. Okay. So I'll hit save. This one takes slightly longer, but only slightly. And then this time, like last time, I'm not going to go back to the VTT, but I'm going to show off the standalone viewer that does require no browser. I can open that file now. I now want to pick remove practice. Okay. Loading up the 913 parts. And now I can play the oil pump removal task. And so if I try to pull the oil pan off, I get the message as expected. But if I do the right thing and I pull off the bolts, we get our message. Thank you, Alexi, for getting it right finally. Great. And the task here can play through all the way to the end, just as it did in the browser. Okay, so that's practice. There's also a test. And so let's just take a little bit of a look at what test looks like in Producer. So I'm going to switch configurations to the remove test, which is here. There we go. So look, oil pump removal, 14 steps. Looks pretty familiar. In fact, the very first step is oil pan, remove oil pan bolts. Actually, that's where I'm going to point out that this is essentially the same content. That it's a copy-paste job, which is what makes it easy to go from practice to test. There's a little different this time. So, for example, given that we already know about success and failure actions, I'll show you that here on this first step, there's now actually only 2 failure attempts. Where the first one is display incorrect, please try again, and the second one is incorrect, proceed to the next step. So we saw 4 levels of feedback in practice and only 2 in the test. We're not really helping the students at this point. They're supposed to know it. That's the whole point. We won't bother. I won't make you watch me do the test. It's going to be about as exciting as when I did the practice. Right, so we have observe, practice, and test for oil pump removal. I'm hoping you're ready to be mechanics. I have just a couple other things I wanted to show off in the VTT. So in particular here, something we didn't get to in oil pump removal is fluid flows and motions. So we can go into observe here as well. Small pause while it loads. At first slower and then faster, pretty much like every progress bar ever. And so I'm just going to jump to the eye candy here, so where we have all of the flows and motions all at the same time. Okay, so we'll just interact with this to take a look at it. So, I mean, this is essentially a collection of flows to teach several things, but this is all to do with the flow of air and fuel related to things like the turbocharger. And so, these are nicely 3D, so I spin around just to prove that. Some of the features I'll point out here. So of course there's blue and red, which is nice. So we can yellow and green, I suppose. I'll point out that these red arrows are actually going from darker red to lighter red to indicate cooling. I'll also point out that the blue arrows are going from smaller to larger. That would show kind of an expansion of gas, I believe, but you could also use it to demonstrate pressure. That's not just a perspective effect that's making those arrows here larger. That's actually the case. And yeah, so I wanted to show those features off. Another interesting part of the VTT here is in the cycle of operations. And so we'll also go to observe. And start. Okay, and so let's just hit play on this one, I think. And so we cross-section away the engine, and now we can actually go in and watch the cylinders. So we can actually see what the injection and compression and firing. We highlight some parts in yellow. And quite a complicated animation here with the pistons and the, I'm not actually sure what the term is for that. But anyways, yeah, I wanted to show that off. So that concludes the prepared content in today's webinar. I hope that was interesting. This is the part where I switch back to the presentation and jump to the final slide where I provide our email addresses to invite you to contact us directly at your leisure. But also I open up the floor to questions and answers. My question for any of you would be that what would be most interesting to you for our next webinar? Obviously, I have something planned for later in the series, but I'm also reasonably willing to be responsive to the market. So let me know where your interest lies. I'll see now if I can access the chat.
Alexi, I actually got an email last night from one of our international prospects that they were unable to attend the webinar today because of time. They did ask the question regarding evaluations, as well as where will this content be posted for watching later. So
okay.
I'll answer the first question regarding evaluations, and then if you would answer the recorded content question, that'd be helpful. So hopefully I'm not breaking up here. I heard Alexi say, uh-oh.
You're doing well now.
Let me go through this fairly quickly. So NGRAIN does offer evaluations of Producer Pro. They are full functioning 30-day evaluations. You can easily access that content from www.ngrain.com. Please be aware that if you want to get any of your existing CAD content into the NGRAIN Producer Pro evaluation, you will also need to evaluate either the Autodesk translation product, the Okino product, or the Transmagic product, and all offer full evaluations of those products. So it's a combination of the two. Otherwise, the NGRAIN product does come with a base model that you can actually interact with and perform any of the features you saw today, plus all the other features that Producer Pro does provide. So again, you can download the product for an evaluation from www.ngrain.com, and it is a full 30-day functioning evaluation. Okay, Alexi, over to you regarding the.
Yeah, okay. So so this meeting was recorded. There's some black box, black magic that the webinar provider does that takes some time and I can't personally explain. And so within a small handful of hours following now, we'll have it available. The plan is to put it up on YouTube and share it by email. So it should be available to anyone who's interested.
Okay, one other question that came in last evening, again from one of our overseas folks, was regarding pricing. And there's actually a couple models that NGRAIN has regarding our product pricing. We offer perpetual licenses as well as subscription licenses for Producer Pro. So from a perpetual side, the product is at $5,000 per seat. And we do offer 6-month offers as well for the product. So if you have interest in direct pricing options for you, please feel free to give myself either a call or an email. And my email address is currently on the screen right now. That's kpollock@us.ngrain.com. Alexi, over to you.
Right, and then I just wanted to say, I know we have at least one person joining us only by phone. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I was about to try to suggest a way for them to ask a question, but I think maybe we'll just have to do that offline later. We'll give everyone a moment if they have anything they want to chat in.
One of the things I was going to mention, Alexi, is that currently this product is used by many, many companies around the world. We're currently represented throughout the U.S. Many of the defense as well as manufacturing system integrators use NGRAIN Producer Pro to deliver content to not only manufacturing organizations in aerospace, in energy, in industrial manufacturing, but also direct to the defense forces. So the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Marines, as well as the Canadian Air Force, Navy, and Army, as well as U.S. Army and Coast Guard, all use the NGRAIN product. And again, overseas, we have people delivering to all sorts of companies from, as I mentioned, aerospace, energy, even in the world of automotive and medicine, use this product primarily for installation, maintenance, and repair. But they're also starting to use it a lot now on the manufacturing assembly floor. So if anybody's interested in any type of references for this product, please feel free to give us a shout. We are used by many of the NATO defense organizations around the globe, as well as many of the very large manufacturing corporations around the world. And we are surely able to provide references and people that you can talk to away from the NGRAIN environment if you're interested in doing so. Back to you, Alexi.
Well, good. I can't say there's been a deluge of questions at this point, so it may be reasonable that we would wrap up unless you have more to add.
Anybody interested in either technical questions or questions related to the product, you can see 2 email addresses there, as well as please feel free to visit the website, ngrain.com, or you can also go out and search for additional technical information and training videos, either on YouTube if you search NGRAIN, or you can actually come to the NGRAIN site, and in our documentation and training sections, as well as product sections, you'll find additional information on Producer Pro. With that, I'll pass back to Alexi to close this up, and thanks everyone from my side. I appreciate your time and interest in NGRAIN, and look forward to possibly talking with everyone after the webinar.
Well, from my side as well, thank you everyone. The next webinar I would say we'll go into more depth on a single topic rather than the more high-level overview we've had today. I look forward to seeing some of you again then. Thanks. Bye.